In today's episode, I'm going to get a little bit personal in sharing my story of not only why I left Ocean City, but ultimately why I came back. Growing up here in Ocean City was an absolute pleasure, but way back then in the 90s and the early 2000s, it truly was a unique and a little bit strange place to be as a teenager. It was the epitome of a ghost town. And there are still people who think that in the wintertime, in the off season, it is a ghost town here. Fortunately, that really has changed, but I'm going to come back to that a little bit later on. I want to share with you kind of what it was like growing up here, again, why I left, and then what really brought me back, because those things were not anything that I really expected to get into. I never thought I would be back here. I thought I had left for good. So growing up here, just like anybody who grows up anywhere, which we all do, you kind of take for granted what you grew up with because it's all you really knew. So while we had a ton of youth athletics, we had access, obviously, to the beach. And I was fortunate enough to grow up on the bay here in Ocean City, too. I really had the best of all worlds, in my opinion. And it was a absolutely glorious place to grow up. Now, as I got older, things started to shift in my mind a little bit, right? As you become a teenager, you start thinking towards college and beyond that. It's really hard to wrap your head around a community like this, a small town where there's not corporations, there's not big traditional jobs, and commuting to Philly or Cherry Hill or any of those areas is almost a requirement if you're outside of certain industries. So I ended up going to school for finance, really math to start, and that was a terrible idea. But fortunately, I woke up and came to my senses after just a few months and transitioned into business school and the business world. So ultimately, again, I was started to build a life down in Maryland. Met my wife down there while I was still in college. Had our first kid, who is now 6 years old, which blows my mind. But really, I came face to face with the realities of my job and my career path that I chose. It was very, very demanding. And I really wasn't going to be able to do everything that I wanted to do effectively. I don't know about you, but I struggle with going halfway. I struggle with half-assing anything. I am full throttle, one or the other. I'm doing something all in or I'm not doing it at all. So when it came time to really look in the mirror and I climbed the corporate ladder as high as I could, having legitimately 9 jobs in 9 years. I consistently climbed through the ranks of management and jumped companies to make the most of that journey and to take the, I don't want to call them shortcuts, but take the path that would get me to my goal the fastest while excelling at every level. I came face to face with the reality that that job was going to be too demanding of my time and my energy. And at that time, I didn't have that to give. I wanted to give that to my wife, to my son. I needed to prioritize my family. So ultimately, I pulled the ripcord on that job. And that career path was going to keep me in a place where it just wasn't who I wanted to be. And I know that sounds maybe a little dramatic, but it's the reality of the situation. And I fortunately learned that at a pretty young age. I believe I was probably 30 back then, just 4 years ago, really. Walked out and looked my wife in the eyes when we sat down at home and said, what are we going to do? There's no plan. I had no plan. And every time we had come back to vacation in Ocean City, we loved it. We really didn't want to leave. But I was always getting sick. I was getting some, not asthma, but upper respiratory type issue that would stay with me for days, sometimes up to a week. And it was without fail. My parents started looking around the house thinking there's something going on in the house. But really what it was is we had a coal-fired power plant right across the bay in Beasley's Point. It's still there. It's the big thing that looks like a lighthouse. If you've been here, if you've come over the bridges, you can't miss it. But it was one of the dirtiest coal plants in the country. And we had it basically in our backyard. So it made sense that that was really something that I didn't want to deal with. But fortunately, that got shut down. I believe it was in April, the news really came out of that year of 2019 that that was going to be done away with. And I happened to leave my job at the end of April of that same year. So when we looked around and said, what are the reasons not to do this? We couldn't think of any. So we picked up, we bought a house, we figured out the rest. And doing that, and the main reason for doing that really was twofold. Number one, and this is again why I came back here. Having grown up here again, I didn't really take it, I didn't appreciate it as I thought I should have. But there's no denying that the safety of this town is second to nearly none. It is a phenomenal place to raise a family. The opportunities that kids have here, not just in terms of sports, but all of the schools, the extracurricular programs, high school has a ton of crazy niche down clubs and things for every interest. I was fortunate enough to be one of the first members of the crew team when that launched here. And that opened up options for me in college, which I didn't end up taking advantage of, but it was a program that really shaped me as a person, right? Taught me some lessons that I wouldn't have learned otherwise about toughing things out, about persevering. But ultimately, there are so many choices here for kids who do grow up on the island. But the one thing that draws a lot of people away from moving here or from living here is jobs, right? What are you going to do? There are so many people who are in tradition, what I'll just call traditional jobs, right? You have a boss, you have a set schedule, you have an office, you have a building that you go to. All of that is very, very tough to leave once you've been accustomed to it. But Ocean City, the amazing thing about it is that it really is a town of small businesses. And not only that, the amount of support among this small business community and the entrepreneurs that are here is something that I could not have imagined. But my wife has started a business. I have started a business in real estate now. It was amazing. It's absolutely amazing, the support systems that exist here. But beyond that, the opportunities that exist here, because there's so many people here, not just in the summer now, but again, year round. There's opportunity to open a business and basically do just about anything you want. If you are a member of any of the Ocean City Facebook groups, and there are a ton of them, you'll see all the requests for everything, every little thing, big thing. There's a need for tradesmen. There's a need for consultants. There's a need for just about anything, especially with so many second homeowners here, right? If you want to start a business, you want to be an entrepreneur, there's so much opportunity here. I have a million ideas that I wish I could execute on, but I am dedicated to doing one thing, to focusing on becoming very, very proficient and helpful at that one thing, being in real estate. But I have ideas that I could start 5 businesses today if I had the time and the wherewithal to do it. And I guarantee that they would succeed. They really would, because the need is there. But beyond that, what brought me back, not just the comfort of home, right? But the nostalgia that brings so many people back here. Do you know how crazy it is that I get to walk into my son's school, the primary school, and I have flashbacks from when I was there because it is nearly identical. Obviously, there's some upgrades that happened over the last 30 years, but I have memories that I had completely forgot about, that I walk past a particular classroom and something comes back. So it's pretty crazy to be able to experience that and to pass on some of those memories and experiences to my son and my future daughter, who is going to be due in June. So we are beyond excited for that. But ultimately, I love it here. I never thought I would come back, and here I am. And I am glad that I came back, to the point where I've tried to think, I've racked my brain. Where else would we go? Where else would we be truly happy like we are now? Where else could we build the life we wanted to, the way we want to build it? I get to take half my phone calls, probably at least, walking the boardwalk or the beach. I can work from where I choose. And in terms of just getting that outside air, when COVID hit in 2020, right, without all the lockdowns in place before they shut down the beaches and the boardwalk and all that, that's what brought so many people back here, because the experience of being around nature the way that we have nature here, again, I have nothing against trees, forests, and woods, but it's a different animal here when you have the horizon endlessly looking back at you, when you can hear the ocean and feel and smell the salt air. It's just different. It hits different. So I love it here. And that is a little bit about my journey of where I came from, why I left, why I came back. I can talk about this stuff for days. So if you ever end up having any questions, if you're thinking about wanting to relocate here, whether that's permanently, temporarily, I would be more than happy to talk with you. And this is not a real estate sales pitch. I'm a sounding board for so many people, and I am honored that so many people trust my judgment and my guidance and my advice, because I've made the transition myself. And having gone through it, there are some things I would have done slightly differently. I'd be happy to share them with you. But that's it for today. Feel free if you want to contact me. All my info is down in the show notes here. But that's it for today. And we'll see you on the next one.